Uh, I am really curious. One of the topics said engaging adults on online platforms. So I'm kind of just interested to hear what technologies people are thinking about using. I am pretty familiar with the Logic Pro and Make a Virtual Choir and stuff like that. I haven't done it myself, but I'm sort of at the beginning of weighing the process of like how much time do I spend on things, how often, and then I still haven't talked to my singers about what their capacity is for, like how many hours a week they think they can engage. You know, we won't be having an hour-long rehearsal every Wednesday, but what can you do, or what are you willing to do? So mostly I'm curious about what technologies people have found that would fit this sort of, it's not school every day, you know, it's sort of what could I do in this situation? So that's kind of why I'm here.
That's great. We can definitely dig into that.
Yeah, I second what Steph said. Is not only the technology, myself being a very untechy person. And so a lot of when people say, oh, well, just separate the audio and the video and use this software for this and this software for this, and then you can do a virtual, and I'm like, no, I really can't. I have no idea how to do this. I have learned a cappella, and I've done a lot of special music for my church this summer with me, myself, and I, and a mouse in my pocket doing fourth, or dragging my husband in, or one other person. So we've done, and that's been received really well. But I'm also trying to figure out how, and I feel comfortable with that program, but how realistic is it? I know I would have some folks in my choir that would say, sign me up. I will download it tomorrow. If you can teach me a little bit, I'll figure it out. And I know I have some folks, especially some of my elderly folks, which make up the majority of my choir, that would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. So how much do I go into that? Do I try it with some folks? At my church, we're very small. And so the choir is the special music. There are no bells, no senior tones, no nothing. It is this wonderful group of 20 people, some of whom are, happy to sing a solo or try something, and some for whom it is safety in numbers only. If they would have to sing by themselves, it would be the most terrifying thing in the world. And so is it realistic to ask them to try and record themselves in their living room so that I can try and splice it together on a cappella? So just, we are not yet meeting in person for services or anything. Everything is recorded. And so just realistically moving forward, and what is I guess I want to be as supportive for them so that they know that music is still alive in our church and we're not abandoning them and abandoning the choir. And yet what is manageable? The pastor's already saying, what are we going to do for Christmas? Mm-hmm. Oh, good Lord, I don't know. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Something different.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Not what we usually do a concert every year, and they do 8 Christmas anthems on one Sunday, and that's their big hurrah. And I said, we can't. That's not happening this year. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's not it. So
yeah, I'm happy to jump into that, Heather. I think this will be great for all of us. And again, I've been saying in the roundtable discussions, thinking of broadening the term of being choir, and how can we use our time together with these adults in other ways to yield things where they can continue to be a meaningful part of the service. So I think that's something we can definitely come back to. So far we got 2 in the same vein. This is good. Anybody else want to jump in? Sure, Kathy.
Okay, because I'm of the same vein as well. And we have a big choir at Augustana. And my thought is, are the people going to be happy? Is it going to be satisfying enough for these musicians who are used to coming in and doing difficult music and working hard for the blend, for the experience of singing together and hearing those harmonies live? Is this experience going to be okay for them? Will it nurture them enough to want to join? And what is the best way to go down that road? Right now we are doing parking lot drive-in ministry where we get 400 people, and we have singers and keyboardists, supplying the music. But I think, when we get to November and December and summer is gone and the nights are longer, people are going to be saying, I'm used to doing something on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, and I miss that. And so I'm just wondering, like the two folks who chatted before me, how can we fill that for them? And how can we make that a meaningful, not only social experience, I'm pretty good at doing that, but how do we make it a meaningful musical experience? And how hard is that? And how many people do you need to have on board to have that happen?
Thank you, Kathy. And I will go on record as saying I am a strong proponent of you keep gathering every week. Whatever your normal schedule is, you gather. And I'll speak more to that in a little while when I inherited the position at Westwood and how that was not occurring and what we've done very quickly to re-implement that. So thank you for those wonderings. And you're the Kathy that we emailed this weekend, didn't we, Kathy?
Yes,
okay.
I'm that Kathy, yes.
Got it. Now I've got the connection there.
Yes.
Great. Anybody else want to jump in?
Well, our choir has not met since COVID started in March. And I think they're missing that community. So I'm thinking of starting up as we usually do in the fall and having weekly Zoom meetings, at least, so that we have that sense of community, and maybe even though we might not be doing any special music for the church services to start with, at least having like a hymn sing where our accompanists could play the hymns and they could choose which ones they'd like to sing. And we have enough hymnals that we can send them home so they could be singing along, and maybe then divide into small groups that would choose a hymn and maybe sing that for one of the special music if we can't all get together. But I'm looking for options also.
And Cheryl, you basically, just what I was saying before, that's what I inherited. This choir at Westwood had not, it's a real strong tradition. You all probably know the Westwood tradition, had not met since COVID. And so we started in August, which the first response was, we don't start till after Labor Day. I was like, this is not a usual year. And so we have actually started gathering for the purpose of introducing them to possibilities and what I've called experiments. And we've done about 5 or 6 different weekly experiments now, just so they can see possibilities. But some of the things you lined out, sending a hymnal home and just sing-alongs and doing a hymn for the service, I think you're on the right track when you're trying to get going. We'll come back to, again, something that Kathy said earlier, though. I think the question that we have to answer is how do we make sure we're presenting it in a way that's meaningful and nurturing? And that involves some conversation, right? So with the singers, we'll come back to that in a moment. Heather or Mark or April?
I was just going to say that everything that's been articulated thus far is on my plate.
Gotcha.
So I'm all on board with all of the questions that are there. I'm in the process right now of gathering survey information from my choir, which I sent out earlier this week, about a variety of different options. And much like what has already been said, I have a variety of answers. Some people are ready to come back and sing in the building. Some people will never do that until there's a vaccine or later. Some people absolutely will not do online for any number of reasons, from technology not having the support for it, or just not wanting to do that, or not seeing the value in it, even though I've articulated all the things that you said, Philip. So part of me is also questioning, how do you motivate people who've already said no? I don't want to do that. And also, I was just curious, Philip, from the last time that I was in a conversation like this with you, and you were demonstrating how to do a rehearsal, are you thinking, and I'm speaking church choirs here, are you thinking that it's for the purpose of performance and worship, or are you doing it for the purpose of community and musical growth and keeping your voice active? And, what are the ways in which we can encourage people to do all of those things, even if it's not for performance and worship?
Great, Heather. Thank you. I'm trying to discipline myself to not answer these right away, like jump in. So that's why I'm typing them in the chat so we get to all of them. I have answers, though, and I've got some show and tell, too. So thank you for those questions. Great. Anything new that you want to add, April? Yeah.
Hi. So
Hi.
yeah, we have not had any in-person in the building worship services yet. And I haven't met with my choir or Zoomed with my choir, although we email, and there has been a special music for the services since we shut down in March. So I've done lots of virtual choirs, small groups, instrumental groups, hymns, for the including instruments and vocals. So I've done a lot of that already, and even though we're distant, I know that like the people of the congregation have really appreciated seeing the choir and hearing the choir still. And I know that the choir has enjoyed those that have been able to participate. And what's great is some of the people in the congregation who haven't ever been able to join choir, I've called on them and they have joined in for this because they haven't been able to make rehearsals before. So I guess one of my questions is for the rest of you, if your congregations are meeting, are you having your congregation sing? So that's what I'm curious. Of course, the pastors in our area would, and in my denomination would like to be singing, very much so. And so it's hard to, I share the Colorado studies and whatnot.
Right.
It's, I don't want to say a battle. They've been pretty good, but it's a challenge. We have been offering an outside service where we do sing 1 or 2 stanzas with masks on softly, and so they have the people that attend are very used to putting the mask on. We are going to be starting an indoor service soon, and I've said I really don't think we should sing. Our ventilation is very bad. But they are getting bipolar ionization.
Good.
So that's going to be coming, but still the comfortability of even allowing anyone to sing softly with a mask on, socially distanced. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
April, you're in a position that I think a lot of people around the country are in when we have some information, some very credible information that we are now trying to share with those who make decisions. And what's the ethical, I think our ethical responsibility is to share what we know, right? And then to stand up for what we believe is to be true. I will say that as optimistic as I am to returning to in-person singing, as I am doing it with choirs, I am not having our congregations sing. So I will answer that one now, but we are substituting it with other ways of musical knowing in the services so that it feels like they're singing. And we are humming. So we've had 2, and we have another set this coming weekend, physically distanced outdoor services. We have this beautiful outdoor hockey rink here in St. Louis Park that's covered. And so we are going to use that every other week until the end of September when the ice goes back on the rink. And then we're searching for what we're going to do after that. And so we had over 200. In fact, truth be told, we were probably a little over 250 the first time. And so we implemented a sign up and then did 2 services. And we had like 300 people between the 2 services 2 weeks ago. And I imagine it'll be the same this coming Sunday. But as I said, we're not having the congregation sing all out, but they are musically engaged in a variety of ways. And so we can dig into that a little bit and maybe some strategies for how you can share that with the powers that be to show that this is the most important thing right now, that they're experiencing it, that they're feeling it, that they're getting that warm fuzzy. But as one of our singers in Vocal Essence said, why be cavalier at this time? Why do anything that's cavalier at this time? And that was in response to singing without a mask on. So for Vocal Essence, we're doing some performances. They're all going to be taped, whatever, but we're wearing masks. Even in the paid performances, I will not let a singer sing without a mask on right now. I just why even take a chance? So I did answer that one. I couldn't resist jumping in a little bit, but we'll come back to it a little bit more here. Okay. Frank,
can I piggyback on what you just said as far as
Sure.
Vocal Essence and masking? Because after this newest round came out of Colorado and talking about, it was a little contradictory because it was kind of like the one scientist said congregational singing is a high risk activity, but then 30 minutes and do this. It was all these. And so what my takeaway was kind of, if you are in a situation where you have to go back to rehearsals, this is the safest way to do it. So at my church, there was some talk among people saying, well, could you use, I'm not like Kathy. Kathy, you have a wonderful big choir, and I just have an itty bitty little choir. So I might have 6 sopranos, but otherwise it's pretty much like 4 in a part. And so people said, well, could you pull your sopranos in to the sanctuary for 30 minutes and then bring your altos in to the fellowship hall for 30 minutes, everybody masked, and then the next day or the following week, do the same thing with your tenors and basses, so that maybe masked, you could record them and then put together a virtual, an a cappella, or however people, like I say, as I said, that's the only one I know how to use, but do an a cappella recording and maybe have them sing once a month a piece that they've been, singing since 1977 and wouldn't be hard to put together. And they said, rehearse masked, record it masked, and you'd only have 30 minutes and nobody would be sharing space. And so I'd just be curious as to how you and how other people, since that was presented to me, since the Colorado study kind of said, try it that way, but don't do it that way. And so I have mixed feelings about it myself. I'm desperate to get them back, but I don't know how I feel if that's okay or not.
I think it is, and we can dig into that, and I'll share that portion of the PowerPoint of how we're doing it with Vocal Essence, which will be the same way at Westwood. Like Heather, my approach has been to demonstrate possibilities and then share the information that I know before I ask on the survey. So case in point, our church, because I'm still very new here, so when I came to the church, they were already starting to put out a congregational survey, and I didn't have enough, I didn't feel that I had enough traction to stop it dead in its tracks. So I worked with the team and we sent the survey out, but I knew in my heart we were asking questions that we had not given them any context for how we were going to address the things that we were asking. So inevitably the survey came back, no one wants to go inside the sanctuary for worship, even though we have, if you've seen the Westwood Sanctuary since the remodeling, 40-foot ceilings, we have doors that open to the courtyard, and we're implementing the bipolar ionization system, and we have good air change rate. So of all the spaces in the cities that I know of, we are well positioned with the physical distancing and the masking to bring people back in there, right, in some way, but we didn't share any of that. And so the survey response was what you would expect it to be. With Vocal Essence, I waited until we presented all the information. It was very late. It was just 2 weeks ago. And then we asked them, how many of you want to return to in-person singing? And it was over in our ensemble, our paid group. Now there's some bias here because they're paid, but about 80% of the paid singers right away said they want to come back to in-person singing. There were 20% who were unsure. And in the volunteer group, which is 120 singers, there were, about 58% who wanted to come back to in-person singing right away. Another 15% that were like unsure, want to hear more, want to think about it some. And then the rest of the group was a little more on the not right now. And there were only 3 people who said, I don't think it's safe. I'm not coming back until there's a vaccine. And, I appreciate all of that and respect all of that. But I think part of the reason we got such a strong response saying I'm willing to return is because we outlined, here are the protocols that we're going to put in place. Here's the covenant that we're going to have you sign, and we're going to be serious. I'm the most grace-filled person that I can possibly be most of the time. But even the singers who have been on the task force with me, and we put it together, a task force of singers to help roll out the covenant, they were telling me, that's too nice. You got to change the way you wrote that. You got to be more direct there. Nope. And so I appreciated that from their perspective of, we want to know that's cut and dry. This is what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to be handled. And so that was my takeaway, is people want to know that whatever we put out there, we're going to abide by it. And it's very clearly articulated. So Heather, we'll come back to that and dig in a little bit here.
Okay.
I want to make sure Frank gets in before we jump into the conversation, because we've got a lot to talk about now. We're ready to rock.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm in a unique situation, or maybe I'm not. Our church has made the decision. We have a committee that's looking at when to reopen. And they have decided that we're going to stay all online worship at least through December.
Okay.
So my choir, met last in early March. But we've been doing about every other week as part of our online worship. There's usually 4 congregational songs, basically, which is recorded music by our small group combo, and the lyrics for people at home to sing along. but every other week or so, I have the choir do one of those with an organ track or something. So there's about 8 or 9 of my 20-some choir people who have been doing that. But the rest of them are quite reluctant. And now I've got, people asking, hey, can you do like one of those virtual choir video things? And my tech director is very capable and willing to do that for me because I don't have the software at home for it. But my singers, I think, are pretty reluctant. So I'm really kind of interested in ways to engage reluctant adults. Because honestly, most of them are in a choir because they don't have to sing alone. And even my ringers are reporting back, well, this has been really good doing these GarageBand audio things because when you hear just yourself, it's kind of scary. And yeah, this is from the kind of the top crust of the group. So I think that's a really important human element in this is how do we keep people engaged and feeling that they're participating and not be freaked out by the technology. So that's going to be an important thing for me, at least through the beginning of January. But then when we do come back, I'm very interested in how do we do rehearsal? How often do we, sing in the service? When does the congregation get to sing? Because I think that's really, in the big picture, more important than the choir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah.
Suzanne, I saw you put in the chat that you were able to now chime in, perhaps. Are you there, Suzanne? Does your tech work now?
Yes.
Great.
Can you hear me?
We can. I think it's working. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? I'm like, okay, all right. So I have a children's choir that we're starting on Thursday afternoon. And we are meeting with social distance and we're going to mask while we're singing. We're going to try to plan the rehearsal so that we have breaks where the kids can take their masks off and not be feeling like they're suffering. And I have like logistic questions. I don't know if any of you are doing like something in a parking lot because that's what we're doing. Just, excuse me, what happens if it rains in the middle of the rehearsal? My husband said, yeah, you can schedule or whatever if it rains before you start, but what happens when it rains when you start? And then waivers, how much policing should we be doing? How do you go about notifying if someone gets COVID? At what point do you decide to just questions like that are kind of bloom. I mean, I'm an optimistic person, extremely optimistic, clearly. But I need to also think through what's going to happen if this doesn't go well. And then my other choir that I do is one for people who have dementia and their care partners. And that one kind of falls in, I feel like, with the church choir kind of questions, which go along with what all of you are sharing. So I'm excited to be here. I'm glad you could hear me.
Yeah, and so I may ask you to type a few things in the chat, but I've gotten really good at listening to broken up Zoom speak. So if that's okay, everyone, I'm going to start there with Suzanne, and that will help us to talk about kind of a way to return in-person singing. What I will tell you, and David, welcome to the conversation. You can just feel free to jump in as we get going. Glad you're here in your outer space room there. So I have been, and it sounds funny, I feel like everything's like, I've done this, I've been doing this. And I'm optimistic too, and with working in lots of spaces, lots of ages, I've had the chance to really experiment with a lot of things this summer. So our vocalescent singers of this age, and I am sharing my screen now, although that's not what I want to share. I want to share this, have been meeting every week through the summer, 1 week in Zoom and 1 week in person. We've been meeting in parks here. Can everyone see that document there? Perfect. Okay. We've been meeting in parks. And so to your question, Suzanne, one of the things I would say is that choose a location where you have a shelter close by so that if it were to rain, you have a covering there. Otherwise, if it's in a parking lot, rent a tent, you know, a canopy tent, not with sides, but just with the top. And that way you can gather underneath the tent. That's what that came out of the Colorado study, was talking about using the canopy style tents as a way to help protect from the elements, not to sing under them, but just you could use that to kind of direct which way the wind is coming from, but to protect your singers from the elements. I think it's great that you're using masks. What I would say you should be most concerned about with young singers is that they are not good at being physically distanced. So you need to make sure there are enough adults there with you to help mandate the physical distancing. Like, it's not a joke, right? And you know this, but the kids kind of think it's funny. So the way I handle it, I'm pretty down to earth with most things, but I've gone out and I've bought a set of cones that you use for athletic training, like little orange cones. They make them in different sizes. And I take those to every in-person gathering, and I get there before everybody, and I physically set up where people are going to stand by putting the cones down on the ground. I put them down about 10 feet apart because I still don't believe that 6 feet is far enough. Even though I know it's outside the cloud, I just want to be extra cautious. So I'm doing about 10 feet. When the summer started, I was doing 15. And then I came back to 10 when they said 6 was okay. I also went out and purchased chairs. Those, the canvas like camping chairs that you fold up and you can put them into a plastic container. And this is, again, because our singers don't have a lot of resources, and the singers of this age, they're used to us bringing everything. So I lug these chairs with me in my car. I get there, I pull them out of the car. They set their own chair up, but they set it up at the cones. I also have, and you're going to laugh at this, I have 2 5-feet pool noodles. And I keep those pool noodles with me because even though they are separated, there are those times when we're either transitioning to get dinner because we have prepackaged dinners. Again, if this is something I'm not doing anywhere else, like I've eliminated food everywhere else. But for this program, we've always provided meals, and so we kept the meals. But when they're moving to and from, I have those pool noodles handy, and I will whack a kid in a heartbeat out of love. And I tell them, it's like, if you get too close, you're going to feel the wrath, you know, and they laugh, but they understand because these are high school kids, and high school kids are the worst. They want to be close to each other. Frank, you know this. They can't get enough from each other. So I have had that pool noodle, and it's made a big difference because now they kind of say to each other, like, you better watch out. Schultz is going to get you. You better back away. So I think it's that kind of stuff when you're in person will help. I would strongly recommend you think twice about having them take the mask off. I would say shorten the amount of time you're together rather than taking the mask off, just because we know that the mask is our best, when combined with the physical distancing and the hand washing and all that sanitation stuff, it's our best way of keeping anyone from inhaling particles or giving out particles to someone else. So I would say go for a shorter period of time and make the mask the deal breaker. So you'll see here this covenant. I'll walk you through it. And feel free, I'm happy to send you all a copy of this after. If you want to put emails in the chat, I can share it now. I'll just start at the top. I won't read all the top. What I thought was important here was first things first, that we just define terms. And so I went to CDC and MDH and all these other places I told you about. And it's like, let's get on the same page with what's language. And what I found, for instance, I was using the word exposure wrong. When I was saying to people, you know, limit your exposure before you come be with us, I was talking about limit the number of people you're around. And that's not exposure by CDC language. Exposure is when you are in close contact with an individual who has a confirmed case of COVID-19. So that was helpful for me to say, I need to watch my language so we're really intentional and we're all speaking the same language. We had a case for one of these outdoor services. The other musician who works with me, who leads our 1045 service, which has a worship team, she had someone in her apartment complex who contracted COVID on a Friday night, or they found out about it on Friday night. We were supposed to have worship on Sunday. Of course, she calls me and it's like, what do I do? And we're like, well, I guess you need to stay home, which sent everything into a tailspin because she had the sound system. So what did I do on Saturday morning? I went out and bought a sound system, which I'm glad I did because it's a great little portable system. But what I come to find out later in doing this digging in the research here is technically, while we were being really cautious, and I would do the same thing again, I think she would too, technically she wasn't in close contact with that person. They lived in the same apartment complex. They'd had a quick conversation outside, but she hadn't spent more than 15 minutes with them within 6 feet. So by CDC standards, she wasn't close contact. So these things like this, I think it's important to share that with your singers so they understand kind of what you're asking them to do. And remember, again, this was just a covenant for returning to in-person. It's like, if you're going to sing with us in person, you've got to know this and agree to all of this stuff. Here's the quarantine. So this is, I copied and pasted straight from all those websites. Contact tracing, and I put this in here because we have implemented our own contact tracing process. And I think we're going to do the same thing at Westwood. So that gets us to this covenant. We started first with saying, here's what Vocal Essence is going to do. And this would help you, Suzanne, as well. Even before Thursday, I think you could draft something together and send it out to those parents and make sure you get something signed before you get those kids there on Thursday. I would recommend something in writing. So we agree that we're going to enforce these documents, these expectations. We're going to provide the sanitizer and wipes. I found the spray bottles. Those are so great. And I got that idea from the George Floyd Memorial. When the kids show up at rehearsal, they get off the buses and they get a spray and they wipe their hands. Before they eat, they get sprayed. Before they go home, they get sprayed. And it's really easy because then they don't have to touch. They're not passing a bottle around. I just spray them. We do have wipes there so they can wipe chairs down and all that kind of stuff. I think that's very handy. When we talk about indoors, we are committing to thoroughly vet the HVAC systems. That's the bane of my existence right now, because I've had to walk away from 3 or 4 venues because I can't validate or verify that it's meeting industry standard. We are limiting the number of singers on site at any given time. So with our adults, for Vocal Essence, we will not have more than 16 singers singing at a period of time. We've divided, and most of you know Vocal Essence, we have 150 adults. We've divided them into pods, into groups. So the ensemble singers, the pro group, is divided into 4 octets. And the chorus is going to be divided into, if it's 70 singers in person, 6 groups of 12. That way I have 3 per part. And we are structuring our rehearsals so that you can see here, again, and I'm jumping between outdoors and indoors, so hopefully I'm tackling a lot of things at once that people are asking about. We're going to provide a specific traffic flow through the building so that when one group is rehearsing and then another group arrives, when group A leaves, they don't go out the same space. We have now 24 people crossing over each other. So we are going to actually have a flow plan that we send out and we have mapped out for each venue that we're in. For church, for Westwood, it's going to be a lot easier because I know all the entrances and exits and we can be very consistent and clear and it won't change. This was the question Heather was asking, adjusting the length of time spent singing before pausing. I am adhering to what they suggested, the 30 minutes. And we know that the pause in a single space depends on your airflow in that space. So for some rooms, it's going to be an hour. For some rooms, it's going to be 2 hours. You've got to know your air change rate before you can get in that space. And that's something you could do with your facilities manager and have them bring in your HVAC specialist and sit in on that meeting. Even if you know nothing about it, I encourage you to sit in on that meeting and then just ask the questions from your point of view. Like, you don't have to have the technical language. I was trying to have all the technical language, and it was much better for me to just say, I need to know, I have 20 singers in this room. How much time is it going to take for their aerosols to disperse and for the room to clear them out before I can bring in 20 new singers? Like, I just went real, just like real talk, and let them talk the jargon. But I made sure it's like, you're going to answer my question before you move on. Like, you have all the technical knowledge. That's great. I need to know the answer to this question. And so I encourage you to be really persistent there. The other thing, you'll hear a term called balancing, and that's one of the things that they're talking about in terms of air change rate. So just make sure you understand all of the terms they're using. Ask about the filters. Ask about the capacity for a HEPA filter. Like, I found out one of our venues, we can't add a HEPA filter, nor can we have MERV 13 filters because the system's designed to use MERV 10 filters. And the MERV is, I won't go into all the technical stuff, but that just tells you how much particle stuff is being cleared out, how quickly. Before I walked away from that venue, though, I did learn that the system has an override button at this particular space where it can draw in more air from the outside at any time. And so my response was, well, can't we just set it to override whenever we have singers in the room so that we can draw in more air from the outside so I can achieve that balance I need? And the facilities manager was like, I guess that's possible. I'll get back to you. So sometimes before we walk away from our spaces, it's just being really kind of creative and finding those answers and getting those questions out there. This is to say, Heather, what we have to do is sorry, my kids are getting crazy. My wife just apparently had to stop something there. If you hear random noises, no one's being killed. I just have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they're pretty active. We have to create a matrix so that if I only have one rehearsal space and I have a 3-hour block of time, how many people can I get in that one rehearsal space in that 3-hour block of time? So Heather, to your point there earlier, Heather Cogswell, what I've done is we have 2 spaces at Plymouth Congregational Church for vocal lessons. So Philip Brunel and I can each be in one space with a group at the same time for 30 minutes. Then we need to let both of those spaces rest for a certain amount of time before we bring in the next group. And so what we have done is we've gone through and created that matrix. And our groups, rather than doing one section at a time, because we have these little pods singing, they're SATB. So what I would suggest is if you could get an octet in and cover your parts, that might be more effective than having a sectional. Or maybe the first couple of weeks when you're learning a piece, because I know you said an old favorite, but let's say you want to learn something new that's relatively easy. You know, bring in the sopranos, bring in the altos. The next night, bring in the tenors, bring in the basses. The next week, perhaps you could bring in an octet. Because then that recording that you make, that could be your final recording for the service. Like, you don't need to do a virtual. You just record that and you put that in the service and it's there. You can put visuals with it. I mean, and I will show you a demonstration in a moment here, I am finding ways to put the singers' faces in the services too. And so if at Westwood the singers agree to come back to in person, some weeks we'll have the virtual choir stuff, and other weeks it'll be 8 to 10 singers in masks singing something that we've done together in real time. Because I think it's something, if you watch, and I'm not being political now, but it's the only conventions that's happened. If you watch the DNC convention, it was very powerful to see them on stage with their mask on when they would greet each other. It was a sign of the time, and it showed that, hey, they're doing what they're asking us to do. So I think our congregations would appreciate seeing something that they know this happened in real time. This happened this week. It feels fresh. It feels real. For our church, we've stopped playing the old anthems from months ago. We were doing the anthems from like 5, 6, 7 months ago. They were playing those back and forth over and over, and I think that served its purpose when COVID started. Now people want to know that worship is fresh and alive. So, and this is my own bias perhaps, I'm making sure that I don't put things in that were ancient. And by ancient, I mean 6 months ago. You know, it needs to feel like it just happened in the last couple of weeks, and it's pertinent and relative. So contract tracing. What we are doing, and let me just skip ahead here. So you can see this is all what Vocal Essence is saying. We're going to provide ways for singers who miss something to make it up by watching a recording so they're not punished for being sick. That way they're more likely to admit and take seriously what we're asking them to do. And then we're going to follow the NBH and CDC guidelines about how we can notify and talk about it. Our plan is, and we're going to do this at church also, if someone in the Westwood Choir or the Vocal Essence Choir contracts COVID and they tell us, we are then going to send out a message to everyone who is in the room that night with them. Everyone gets that message in the room with them. The rest of the group is not going to get that message, because in my mind, they don't need to know that, you know. But if you were in the room, you're going to get a message that you were in contact with someone with COVID who's contracted COVID-19. The next message would be if you were in close contact, because I know where everyone's standing. If someone was in the same section or close to them, then they will get a second message just saying that you were in close contact with someone who's contracted COVID-19 at a recent engagement. You should, you know, reach out to your health providers and then go back and talk about the quarantine, you know, consider quarantining and all the things in our covenant. We feel that's the most ethical way to handle it, because we're not a health institution. We're not required to report it to the CDC or whatnot, or MDH, excuse me. But I do think it's important that we report to our singers and the singers who are impacted by it without reporting to the whole group, which can then blow it up and turn it into a big issue. And we may regret that later. It may get out other ways and we may have to revisit that policy, but that's what we're going to start with. And we've talked about stressing confidentiality. So the hopes is that one group doesn't go blabbing to all the other groups. Hey, someone had COVID. Do you know who it is? We're going to do our best to try to limit that and encourage people not to pry. If someone wants to say they have it, they can say that, but it's not our place to share that information. So what are we asking everybody to do? And this works for the elementary singers. You can see how much more specific can I be about masks? And we all are asking the same questions about the mask. In fact, just yesterday, something came out that those singers' masks, someone did do some tests and apparently they are not doing well in the testing, which we initially said right away, we don't recommend that you spend $30 on a singer's mask. Get something that can stay on your face that satisfies all these things here. I just found something really cool at Target. For $4, there's a 2-pack of masks and they are by size. They also happen to be dark blue. So for performing in them, they look consistent, and they have a place where you can stick a filter in there. So it satisfies the idea of needing to have multiple layers, and you can adjust the back so it can get real tight. I bought a couple of them and it seems like it may work. So we're going to use those. We're going to have singers provide their own mask for rehearsals and we'll check them out, vet them. But for performances, I think we're going to provide some type of mask if I can get enough of these navy blue masks and let them have their own performance mask and give them filters. David, I see your hand up.
Yeah, Philip, where did you get that report about those singers' masks? Where did you?
I will send you. It's on Facebook. Someone did another study. I'll put that in the chat before we leave. I think I can find the link to it. If not, I'll make sure everyone gives me your email address and I can send it to you after we're done.
I have a question too.
Steph.
I was just thinking about masks and recording and just the quality of sound. And I'm curious what you've learned about what to go for, like what material to go for that meets COVID standards, but then also allows a good audio recording of singing.
Yeah. And this is, again, me showing my bias. I'm just happy we're singing. And so as long as the mask satisfies the standards and you can breathe in without inhaling your mask,
sure.
That's what I'm telling people, is to find a mask where you can breathe and you can sing. And then when we hear you, we can talk about some strategies for articulation and diction. Many of you may have done the same thing. Back in May, there were some groups in Europe that were putting out recordings with masks on, professional groups, small ensembles. I found them to be quite lovely. And I didn't notice a discernible difference in the diction. Now, again, it may be the music they were singing. It was more lyrical, more fluid, so it didn't require the same level of articulation. I've just kind of resigned myself to knowing that we're going to have a little more muddied clarity of diction, and I'm okay with that. And we're talking about, for our produced concerts, putting the lyrics on the screen so that people can always see the lyrics. And we do that for church services too. At least I've been doing that. I always put the lyrics there. So it's kind of dodging your question, Steph. I don't know enough yet to be able to tell you best techniques to make it better. My
That's okay.
Will over-sing in the mask.
Yeah.
I want to resist the over-singing temptation, the temptation to over-sing.
Well, and I think the reason this is on my mind is that, our microphones are not top of the line. And so if I have a mask on my face, when we're recording our worship services, I am singing and speaking into the mic. But if I'm wearing my mask, it doesn't pick me up enough to be usable. I haven't tried with recordings. So I was just trying to figure out what people knew. Yeah.
And this is just when you're recording by yourself, you're not wearing a mask though, are you then?
So we actually have people in our sanctuary, like we have the pastor and then our accompanist and usually a cameraman and then one other person. There's kind of 4 family groups, 4 to 5 in the sanctuary, spread out pretty well. And then we actually record it live, but also show recordings of people. So like today I was at church singing into the microphone without my mask on. And then there was someone, 6 feet away singing into her microphone without the mask on. And again, it's just because I don't think it was going to pick it up with the mask on. So I'm just sort of evaluating what we really should be doing.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I will say that I've done the same thing in our church recordings where when it's just the two of us and we're about 10 to 12 feet apart, though, just to be perfectly honest, we put that extra space and we've both been without masks. And it's only the two of us in the sanctuary. And it may not be the best practice. I keep thinking about, what am I modeling for the rest of the world? I do feel safe when it's someone that we both have been in communication. We're almost in the same bubble now. And when one of us feels like we might be compromised, then it's like we're not going to record together. So I feel in those cases, it is okay to go without a mask on. But if you're talking a group, I would say just give it a shot, give it a try. And the other thing is could you find, depending on what kind of microphone you're using, I know there are some voice amplifiers that will fit under the mask. These are things that people have been using outside. I have not tried them yet, but they're relatively inexpensive and they're used just to amplify the individual voice. I understand it that you could have that under the mask. It would give you a little extra amplification that might then get to the microphone when you need to sing with a mask on in the mic.
Yes, Philip, I can speak to that because I
Yeah.
did my little personal amplification thing hangs around my neck. I mean, this is the rig I'm going to have in my classroom to have that, and it has like an earpiece and a microphone. So I was kind of wondering, does your church have those sort of mics? And then I just saw in Philip's thing, you haven't got to it yet, but you said surgical masks are what's recommended. I found out, you may in the chat, a YouTube link on how to get a surgical mask to fit tighter on the face and not gap on the sides. It's a way of folding it and tying it in a certain way that makes it look more like this. So when I put it on, it is, it's tight here. And so if you watch, there's a million YouTubes, there's so many dentists and nurses that have made these now to show you how to fold it or tie it in this way. And so there's enough room that my mic can go under here. And I still sound a little bit like Darth Vader because it's like you get the breathing sound, but it also has like one of those little foam things over the, whatever that's called, right? Over
the shield. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I have, and I can be heard when I'm teaching in the chapel. I'm going to be singing outside for the start of school, but just even to be heard in the chapel under a mask.
Mm-hmm. You froze for just a second there, Karen, but what you said was spot. I love hearing that. Thank you for that little trick there. Hopefully she'll be back in a second here. So that was very helpful to see. And I'm just catching up on the chat too, and we'll come back and address those. By the way, I'm looking at where we are now, and I have until 2:30 free. So I know it's at 75 minutes just because I wasn't sure how much conversation we'd have. But we'll keep going and you leave when you need to leave. How's that? Distancing, that's important. Here's what we're doing that I think is real simple. We're going to create, well, it's simple in principle. We're going to create a form that basically has the symptoms listed, and each singer will get an email the week that they're supposed to come to rehearsal for them to check this off, that they are not exhibiting any of these symptoms down here of COVID-19. Unless it's something, and what I realized after we created this was we need to make a space for, if you are exhibiting this, please tell us why, because there are some people who have chronic muscle pain. And I want them to be honest to say, well, I'm having muscle pain, but that's something that I always have. Or I always have migraine headaches, and so I'm having a migraine headache. And so, again, encouraging transparency. So it doesn't mean if you check one that you're automatically excluded from attending rehearsal, but we want to know why. And so what will happen with this form is, at Vocal Essence anyway, that form will come back to us, and then it will immediately send something to them saying, your submission has been received. They bring that with them to rehearsal. That means they are clear to go. That's like their green card, unless they hear from us. And then if we write to them or call them and say, we have a question, you shouldn't attend. So we're doing it that way at Vocal Essence. I know the Minnesota Orchestra, if any of you have attended their PV Plaza concerts, it's very similar. You can't get into the concert without the email receipt saying that you're cleared to go. And so I think theirs is pre-screened, where if you check certain things, it excludes you automatically. And so I encourage you to do something like this with your singers. Again, we all want to think the best intentions of our singers, but remember what I said earlier, what I learned from our singers, they want to know that it's clear and it's going to be consistently enforced. So we're taking out all the guessing game. It's going to be a lot of work. For those who don't know me, I hate this kind of detailed work. Like, this is like checking attendance and all. I could care less. It's like, it's rehearsal time. Let's go. That's my normal disposition. But we are going to be really rigid, and we've got extra people helping us to do this. Our section coaches and staff members who aren't usually at rehearsals kind of helping us with this. We're also going above and beyond. I don't think this is necessary for church settings, but we're going to send out something 2 to 3 days after every in-person gathering, also just to make sure people are still not feeling anything. So you could take that if you want to. That one is not mandatory, but that way it's just another check-in, because someone made a good point. Vocal Essence is Tuesday, and then I have my Wednesday choir, and then I have my Thursday schedule. If I contract COVID on Friday, I might not think back to, oh, I was Tuesday, I should let them know. And so we're just trying to put touch points in there in a non-threatening way to keep it on people's radar. I think the most important things are these 3 stay homes. And so we put them in. In fact, in my first thing, it was like, when in doubt, sit it out. That was my key phrase. When in doubt, just sit it out. We don't want to see you. We love you, but we don't want to see you. We bought the the little pulse oximeter. Have you all seen these little things here? You know, I remember them for my kids when they go to the doctor. They usually use these with them. And I'm realizing you can't see me because I'm sharing my screen, all of you, depending on how you have your screen. So this little thing here, I bought one of these because the other day I wasn't sure. And as I understand it, this for adults is often a better indicator than fever. So if you have a pulse, blood oxygen level less than 90%, that's something you want to be concerned with. That's a good indicator that something's going on in the system. And so I've been tracking mine just to make sure I'm like 98, 99, 100. So I have my baseline, because I'm one of those people, and many of you are probably this way too. I just push through everything. That's been my habit my whole life. I don't really feel sick. I don't stop. And it's really scaring me, because I'm like, I have this great responsibility, and I need to make sure I know what indicators to watch out for myself. Like, I've got to pay attention to my body. I've spent my whole life not ignoring my body and pushing through, but now I've got to really pay attention to it. And so that's come in handy for us. We're going to have that. We're going to have a thermometer. And the rest of this is just, again, what we're asking them to do. Isolate if you do have COVID-19, complete the reforms, adhere to CDC, and then there's just a signature. So like I said, I'm happy to share this with you. But Suzanne, I think a very simple version of that for your kids before they come on Thursday, just so that they, even if it's just agree to stay spaced out, stay masked, wash your hands, you know, just 3 or 4 things. And stay home if you don't feel well, and have those parents sign that before Thursday. I think that's going to really put you in a good position to make sure when they arrive, you feel good about everyone that's there. David, you had a question.
Yeah,
You said there was a pulsometer.
Yeah, a pulse oximeter, I think is what it's called. Yes. Forgive my spelling. I know it's pulse oximetry is the term when you're checking that out there, but I think it's a pulse oximeter. And you can correct my spelling if you find it.
Philip, can you talk to your about your experience rehearsing outdoors when it comes to like winds, or are you in one long row? Are you staggered in multiple rows? What's been the deal there?
Yeah, it's been a combination, Karen. What I started with at first was I would take one person and then space out, you know, the 10 to 12 feet on the sides, and then I would a diagonal in front of them, another 10 to 12 feet, and kind of created a little matrix there. And perhaps I can find a picture here real quick while I'm talking to you about that to see. I've explored just straight lines as well, depending on how many people are there. I've also, this last Monday, we actually sang in a circle because we were outdoors and there was about 30 feet in between us. So there was so much space that I felt comfortable being in the circle. Normally I face out in the circle, but this time we actually did face in the circle, and it seemed to work pretty well. The sound, I'm not gonna lie, the sound is really tough for the singers to really hear. So I think this will share, friends. I'm gonna share, this is our Instagram page, so you can just see here a little bit of it. So this one was a couple of weeks back. So you can see how they were like 15 feet apart there. And I try not to have anybody standing right in front of someone. So if there's someone here in the back and someone is in front of them, they're slightly diagonal. So hopefully that flow of air, if they're all facing forward, that flow of air, unless the wind shifts, is not moving over. But also being 12 to 15 feet away from each other, my hypothesis is that the wind will the air will disperse those aerosols. That's another reason why I'm choosing a wider space or more distance. Here's what I was talking about this last week. That was like an eternity apart. Like we could have played Red Rover. It was like running a little sprint there, the distance from the circle. And so when we sang songs that they didn't know, and we only sang for like 15 or 20 minutes, most of our gathering is just socializing and connecting with the kids because it's summertime. But when we sang something they knew well, you could kind of hear it. When I introduced something new, it was like crickets because, you know, they're all so self-conscious and in their own space. But this right here was 8 feet apart.
How many
8
people?
feet apart. There were 23 of them, 24, 25 if you count myself and our other adult there.
Are you asking them to sing a little softer and not project as much?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that, Kathy. I was not with the kids. I've just been letting them see what happens naturally and then asking them how it feels afterwards to see if they feel like they're over singing.
How about vocal lessons?
Yeah, these are the vocal essence kids. So I have not done this enough yet with our adults because
Okay.
we've been on summer break. So
Yeah.
we're going to actually start again. September 1st is our first rehearsal with them.
Okay.
And so I'll know more then. I will say the kids are a good gauge though, because, you know, high school kids can be self-conscious. This is an outgoing group. They self-select to be in this choir, but they are still a little self-conscious at times about, you know, what they sound like. Are they meeting the expectation? I'm trying to find another picture here. I think there's another one when we were outside that you can see too. Yeah, this is it. This was at the George Floyd Memorial.
Okay.
I didn't share sound, so I'm not going to play it. But you can just see again, and that's all there. I encourage you just to be creative and explore it. I think rehearsing outdoors is a great way to start, even with the adults, if you can get them to commit to it. And so I'm bouncing around trying to cover what was in the chat earlier. I think it's worthwhile presenting to them a case to returning to in-person singing if you want to give that a shot. Acknowledging that everyone's going to make their own decision based on their situation. At the Westwood Choir, I'm meeting with everyone. In fact, when I finish this call, I have a getting to know you gathering at the church outdoors, physically distanced. There's no singing. It literally is just me getting to know them because I don't know them, like literally do not know them. 30 people so far have signed up for those. This is a choir that's mostly 50 plus. So that tells me that they're willing to come together in person and see each other and meet each other. Now that I know that information, I'm building the case for how can we return to in-person singing. And again, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I'm just going to keep addressing things that came up in the chat. And I feel like I'm talking too much, but I will stop whenever you want to jump in and interject something. So this is what I shared with Vocal Essence. A lot of that information, you saw the covenant. Well, before the covenant, I created this PowerPoint. And this was the video that I created. So it starts here, and I won't talk through reading the slides. I'll just click through them so you can just see. I wanted them to know, like, hey, I want you to see what we're talking about. Take this seriously. Here are the principles guiding how we're going to do this. Your health is the most important, and we honor your rights. Here's what we've learned about performing arts, because at this time, the study was brand new. So now we know that, yep, all the wind instruments are comparable, except for the oboe. The oboe is a super spreader. I can say that among us, right? The singers are not the super spreaders as it goes. All of these events are super spreaders, you know, if you want to look at it that way. I showed this slide, and I'm assuming you all have seen the survey, the study rather, excuse me. So I won't get into it, but I wanted them to see how much a mask does to, you know, reduce concentration. So after giving them this information, I reiterated again, use of a face mask is important. So building the case of, if we wear a face mask, we might be able to do this. And then I went into these 5 categories. Here's what we're going to do to promote your health and safety. And I get fancy with PowerPoints. This is what COVID has made me do. I get real fancy, so I have to click through. So we talked about all the different things we're going to put on. We're going to limit the people, limit the on-site socializing, all of that stuff. And then we went into, this is where I put the when in doubt, sit it out. This was before we had written the covenant. So we knew the categories we wanted to deal with, but we hadn't done it. So there's the specifics. Then I talked about the mask. And why am I showing this to you? And I'm happy to share the PDFs of this with you. I took that directly from the Federation study. I took that directly from the study, except on the outside. Then I put our own caveats, because we don't have one venue, we have many. And that was the biggest thing, by the way, to assure people that we've done our homework with venues. That's been a game changer for most people, to know that we're considering that and that we can provide specs for spaces. Talked about this, that, and then I shared our model. And so even if you return to in-person singing, and this is the case that I'm now building, so I'm going to adapt this PowerPoint for Westwood, so there'll be some things that change. But this is the same model, that the case for in-person singing would be, and I think I just got out of the screen share inadvertently there, I apologize. The case for in-person singing would be that, A, we're going to do small groups. We still will meet online. And I have ways for us to meet online to sing together, but also to do stuff when we're not together that's benefiting our work. And when we're in person, we're going to have the spacing, and you won't have to do as much. And so the thing for the church choir is what I've already told them verbally, and I'm going to stop sharing now, is that we're not going to try to do 4 pieces a week. If I can have you in the service for one thing each week, one thing just so the congregation sees you, then that means a meaningful contribution. So this digs into the question of, what is that one thing? Heather, you asked earlier, Heather Hood, you know, is it just for the sake of rehearsing, or is it for doing something? For me, these rehearsals are so that we can be a part of services. So what I have laid out and what I'm experimenting with, it's a new way of rehearsal planning. And it's really funny. I don't believe it's beneficial to do more than 75 minutes at one time with adults, because we're all having Zoom fatigue. And at the end of an evening, a Wednesday evening, a Thursday evening, adults are just zoned out. So what I've been exploring is, in that 75 minutes, what can we do? Actually, they've been an hour, and they all go 5 to 10 minutes long, to be really truthful. And so I've learned that I have an extra 10 minutes. So we start with everybody standing up, we turn on our mics, and we make noise, just like I did in the August 6th demonstration. We sing, we sigh, we breathe, we sing some stuff that works well together, where I sing and they respond, and it somewhat lines up, and sometimes it doesn't. And then I have them just make noises at the same time, just so we create that feeling of being in choir together. Then I ask them all to mute, and inevitably there's someone who's on the phone. And I want the phone call people to be there, and the phone call people don't know how to mute. And so I just make it okay to know that you're going to hear that one voice trailing you when everybody else is muted. So just be prepared for that. But be playful with it. You know, hey, you sound great there. But then that's when we do the kind of serious vocalizing. And so I put them through the paces. I've learned that I try to stay in the middle range. So I'm not exploring the extreme highs and extreme lows. I'm just really giving them a good vocalizing session in that mid-range, you know, up to the E natural or the F, maybe the F, and then down on the low end to an A or an A flat, you know, so not trying to exercise the extremes. But, you know, the normal vocalizes that we would use. I think all of those work. Then I haven't done this with the adults here yet, but I do this a lot with the youth. I do a lot of audiation and ear skill building things. And so you can have them build chords. And some of you have seen me do this where you can have them turn on the volume again, and you can create chords, you know, and have them sing the root, the third, the fifth, and sustain things like that, and just practice some chords, or have them fill in a note in the scale. You know, you sing do, ti, la, they fill in the missing note there, things like that, if you want to do some of that just to tease the ear. After that, we do an old favorite, and this is where I've gotten creative. We have an interim, we don't even have an interim organist, he's a guest organist because we're still going to hire an organist. So I've had him come in and record several hymns. And a couple of the rehearsals, what I've done is played that recording. I share my sound, and I do use Zoom. I think Zoom works really well, so I use Zoom. I share my sound, and I play that hymn, and they all sing that hymn at home muted. But they hear the organ. And in my church, you know, the organ is, you know, with the choir, when they hear the organ, it's like echoes of home. It feels good. So whatever that is for your church, give them that sense of something familiar early in the rehearsal. That's a feel good. My friend John Dixon calls it a sugar stick. You know, give them that sugar stick repertoire piece. Another way, because what I'm building towards is, can I get a set of recordings of their voices that I can play back into rehearsal? And so this is where if you have older recordings of the choir, this is a great way now in rehearsal, bring out an older recording of something they know and love and play that and have them sing along with it. Because one of the things that I've heard from the adults when we were doing this with Vocal Essence was, we like doing this, but we miss hearing each other. And so one day on a whim, I just went to YouTube and pulled up a recording of us singing with Melanie DeMore. And they were like, that was so cool because I could see us on stage. I could hear all the parts and it felt like I was there again. So find a way to bring their voices into the room with something familiar. Now let's deal with the technique of, do you share your screen? Yes, if you don't have another way around. I can't remember who said it earlier, but you're spot on with what I'm going to do. I think it was you, Cheryl. I am now putting together hymnals and packets of music.
Yeah.
So I'm going to send everybody home with a hymnal and then some pieces that I know we're going to choose for the fall. I'm asking them to come by the church to get it. If they can't come by the church, we'll send it to them. And that way, even if I share my screen, if that's too small, they can just use the hymnal. They can use the music. What I love about the Lutheran hymnal, and coming from the Methodist church where I served before, the Lutheran hymnal is so up to date, and there's so many pieces in there that function like a mini anthem. So the majority of my repertoire is going to be from the Lutheran hymnal because it's there, it's easily accessible. The congregation doesn't know it, so we can sing it in that offertory slot or that, you know, song of the day slot or whatever, and it will function well like that. Kathy, you'd asked the question about, you know, are they going to see this as meaningful if they're not singing the complexity of music that they've done before? And my answer is yes, if you present it as this is the best alternative that we have right now. So let's dial back the difficulty so we can enhance the connection and make this medium work for us. I've received a lot of positive feedback to that. In fact, one singer specifically said, thank you for not trying to make us sing stuff that's super hard. It doesn't mean that we can't be creative. Doesn't mean that we can't add descants and things like that. And I'll share a path to that in a minute. But I think less is more. Someone asked in the chat about my high school choir can't handle SATB, and Karen's response was, I'm using Unison 2-part and Canons. I think that's the way to go, simplify. Consider a soloist with holding tones underneath, because that's another place where you can get people live in the room at the same time singing together. So right now, if this were a rehearsal demonstration, I could give you all a chord and say, improvise any note in this chord and sustain it. And then, okay, Heather, you sing a solo, sing I Am a Poor Wayfaring Stranger on the top of our sustained drone. Now, Frank, you take the solo verse. And so there's ways to get voices in the room and create their own individual complexity of harmonic, shifting notes here or there. When you take rhythm away on Zoom, you have the ability to bring more voices off mute. So that's the principle. I should speak in terms of principles. When you take away the rhythmic complexity, you can introduce more voices into the live recording. One of the ways I am checking, and we developed this in our St. Thomas class with the grad students, was a new gesture of conducting for Zoom. So when I want to check chords, I have them do this: sustain, breathe, go to the next chord, breathe, next chord. So this works well for homophonic music, because now they can sing that chord in real time with me and keep moving ahead, and I can check. It's not going to line up exactly, but as long as I can hold it there and I can hear everybody's notes, and that gives us a chance to kind of work through a piece in real time. And I've really been experimenting with that, and I explained to my singers, it's messy. I know it's not the best, but I'm trying to find the best ways for us to hear each other more often than not. And they appreciate that kind of transparency of, hey, I'm experimenting. I'm just trying to find the best practices. If something's like really dreadful, let me know in the chat and I won't do that again, I promise. That kind of thing like that. Heather C., you had your hand up a moment ago, I think.
I put it in the chat,
Okay.
chat box as well, if you want to read that. I'm just wondering, so if you're using the Lutheran hymnal, or you're using some of the simpler rounds and canons and things that work, and you're rehearsing in Zoom, then are they recording something and sending it to you so that it can be part of a videotaped service?
Yeah. Okay. This is where I geek out. Okay. Can I show you 2 quick show and tells?
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you about it, how we did it. So I've got to find, and give me a second here. I got to get out of that program there. I'm going to go to and Kathy, you may have seen this already if you watch what I sent you. So I apologize. You have to indulge me one more time.
That's okay. I just don't know how you got there.
I'll tell you. I promise I will. So I'm going to our Westwood page, and I'm going to pull up today's worship service, except because you were all here looking at me, it's taking me longer to get there. You know how it is. There it is. Watch the 8:23 worship. Now I'm going to share my screen. And what I will tell you is that I'm not the technical guru. Like, I'm not the greatest at this. I'm doing it. My final products are not fabulous, and I'm okay with that. So this was our service today. I believe it was 3 minutes in, the first thing. There we are. Can you hear sound?
Yes.
So this instruction will make sense in a moment when you see them. I'll come back to that in a minute here. I want you to see Paula Holmberg, our ACDA president-elect there. That was recorded synchronously at the same time in Zoom. So the reason why they looked kind of funny was because they were, and I don't have my, oh, there it is. They were in Zoom rehearsal with me. I had the music on the screen. They had their cell phones here. We went to a program called Flipgrid, which you can use Flipgrid, or you could just have them record it individually on their phone. The reason I set up a Flipgrid is because all they have to do is once they do the download of Flipgrid, and let's talk about that for a second. You're going to spend one rehearsal teaching them how to get the Flipgrid. I mean, like I sent out instructions in advance, but then I spent like 20 minutes walking through, making sure everybody had it, right? And inevitably somebody won't have it, and that's okay. It's like, just record it on your phone and send it to me. So once they had the Flipgrid, they put it up there. They are singing with me. First thing I said was push play, push record. They record. I started the music. They were all singing at the same time, which is something important to me to experiment with that we can actually say we did this at the same time. I had them on mute, obviously, so only their phone could hear them. It should have been where I told them to have earphones in, like Frank and I have headsets in, but I didn't even say that. So in many of their tracks, you could hear the organ underneath, but it still turned out. And so again, this was a test just to see if I don't set up the perfect circumstances, can I still create something that yields a usable product? And the answer is yes. Flipgrid, once they finish recording, they push done and push another button with a selfie, and then it uploads it to the grid, and they're done. So this was done, and it was our first rehearsal. So this is the first time they'd ever rehearsed with me. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna make this recording. And of course, I could see faces through the screen like, what do you mean? It's like, trust me. And then I had to just figure out a little bit of syncing stuff there. It wasn't bad, and I've been playing with the syncing for a while, but Frank, in your case, if you have a technical person at your church, you could easily send those tracks to them and they could line it up for you. It'll probably take them 4 to 5 hours, but they could line it up and get it done. Now, if you don't want to deal with the video, you could just do the audio, and it takes even less time. Yes, Steph.
Just before you move on to the audio part, so with Flipgrid, are you then finishing that video using all Flipgrid, or are you using some other video apps?
Yeah, I am using another software because Flipgrid is just a place. So thank you for that, Steph. Let me be really clear. Flipgrid is a community where, a site where teachers can create learning communities, but it's also open to other people now. And so it's just a place where you house videos for conversation. It's not a place where you can edit and combine. You could create like a collage of videos, but you couldn't sync them up like this into a choir. So I use the program Movavi. It's a mid-grade program. I also have on my laptop now Final Cut Pro, which is the Mac, one of the Mac programs, and I've been playing with that, and I intend to switch over at some point. What I like about Movavi, and it cost me about $79, is that it's very, very intuitive. In fact, if my computer doesn't freak out, I'll open up the interface and show it to you.
So that one you made was in Movavi?
Yep, everything that you've ever seen me make, including that video last week of Michelle singing Buana, what was the song that we did there? Yesu Kwetu ni Rafiki. I did that in Movavi too. I did iMovie, but the problem with iMovie is that anytime you create layers, you have to save each layer as its own project. Which means if you're gonna do 10 singers, you have to create a video with one singer, save it, export it, come back in, and then you load that layer on top of the next singer, singer 2. Save it, exit. The very first choir, virtual choir, I did the Rudder Deep Peace. And I was trying to do that, and I got like 6 singers in. I was like, there's got to be an easier way. And so I found this other program. So that's why I don't use iMovie. It's an effective program for a lot of things, but not for this. So this is my interface.
Philip, is Movavi, is that compatible with PC or just Mac? Or?
I think it's compatible with PC too, David. And here it is. Can you see my whole screen? Can you see the title up there? Movavi. So this is what it looks like when I put in tracks. So what I love about it is I have a quick thing to import. And can you all see my screen interface?
Yes.
So, and I was one who was not going to do this. I went the first 5 months. I was like, I'm not doing a virtual choir. I don't even like the term virtual. And then I slowly converted myself when I realized I could use it in an iterative way, use it for rehearsing and things like that. So it's easy for me to upload a video. I can just take something, click it, and then it sticks it in. And then I just drag and draw. So I drag and draw the people in there. I put a little background and it creates something for me. This one is, so Be Thou My Vision, I edited it in this program. Be Thou My Vision was recorded synchronously. This video that you're gonna see now, where Karen is in it, but Karen's mouth doesn't match the rest of our mouths because Karen's microphone wasn't working, but I was like, I'm gonna put Karen's face in there anyway, because you know what? The church wants to see her. So I'm just being transparent, like I don't care about the perfection. It's like on Sunday mornings, my choir never sang everything the way that we rehearsed it anyway. You know, so I'm just like, let's model that same thing. It's gonna be some imperfections. God will be glorified. So this was also in today's service.
Who is the rock?
Uh-oh, did it stop sharing?
Who is the rock?
Oh yeah, it froze.
It froze for you? Okay, hang on. Sorry, I moved something in it. I tried to make it a bigger screen in it. That's why I did that. My apologies. Oops, sorry. Wrong video. That's the one. Okay, now you can see, I think.
The rock protects. The rock is Jesus, Jesus. The rock protects.
It doesn't like me now. Remember I told you if my computer cooperates? So let me go back out of that program. The thing about Movavi, it's been good to me. It's a finicky program. If you don't have enough capacity on your laptop, like really strong memory, I find that it's tough using it. So I actually upgraded my laptop. So here's the other one. It was 28 minutes.
Is not just about us in this West.
There we go.
He heals from sin. He heals from sin. The rock protects. The rock is Jesus, Jesus. The rock protects. The rock is Jesus, Jesus. He rescues all. He rescues all.
The hardest song a choir's ever sung, right? The most challenging anthem ever. That's literally, you know, a hymn, a Kenyan hymn that our congregations never sung. Now, I went and found a backdrop. The rock is Jesus. That would be interesting. It's only 1.5 minutes long. You know how long it took me to make this video? I'm embarrassed to say, like 30 minutes. And here's why. So one of the things that I'm testing, and you all have heard me talk about this if you've been visiting with me, and so I'm going to share it with you because I'm at a place now where I can invite a few people who are willing to test it to join in the testing. So give me just a second to share this with you. I got to pull this up. Bingo. This is a platform called Song Along. At the beginning of COVID, one of the singers and vocal lessons, and we were talking and just dreaming, what if we could create a platform where it would be easier for the director, where it just syncs everything up. And you don't have to spend hours lining up tracks and collecting files. Everything's just done for you. And that's what this platform is. And so we're still in the testing phase. So it has not been announced. You're not going to find it out there yet. You're only going to hear it from me. I'm I'm the artistic advisor. So I'm not the brains behind actually making it happen. I'm the one who said, this is what we need. This is what it has to do. And so two WPI, Worcester Polytech Institute grads, they're up in Boston like MIT. One who graduated in 1978 and the other one who graduated this year are the ones behind the program. They both sing in choirs, one of them with vocal lessons. And so it's a beautiful project-based thing here. So you see it's very simple. And seriously, any of you who want to try this, I can share it with you in the next week, as long as you promise to test it out over the next 2 weeks. Because the next phase, we want to get as many people testing it before we open it up to the world. So you put in your project, you can upload the sheet music right here. And so like, seriously, I can just go there. I'm going to do Calm to the Waves. There it is. If I want to do a click track, I can do that, put that in, or I can tap. And that was one of the things I asked for, is if I want to tap it instead. Then you put in your conducting track, and you see the music's on the right, and you can blow it up if you want to. Down here at the bottom, you can practice it and play it back, or you can just record it. And when you're done, it'll tell you you have a recording in there. And I'm just showing you all of this so you can see how intuitive this system is. After that, you record your parts for each part. If you want to add other instruments, you can add those in. And then you click done, and it sends out a link. And that's the link you send to your choir. And here's the cool thing about it. When the choir sends stuff back, this is what you start to get. You get all of their videos. And so this is a new project that we're just starting. So most of them are my demo tracks, and then I see one singer has already submitted his. If I go to that project you just saw, the reason why the Mwamba took me 30 minutes was because this is what happened. People submit it, then I click render, and it spits out a grid. So if I didn't want to dress it up, I have a grid performance right there. Now, we did have a little technical syncing issue, which is why it's still in testing phase. So when you listen to it, it won't sound as good as it did on my last video, but you'll see it's here.
Who is the rock? One Jesus. Who is the rock? One Jesus.
Yeah, there's a stutter step. It was like a regular Wednesday night. But the idea is that you can then download each of these files and put it in another program. Or if you just wanted to take this right here and download this as is, you could just stick that into your Sunday morning service and you don't have to do anything. And so right now, once we get to the place of, and if you do want to test this out, you can use it and you can put it in your services and check it out and try it out if you want to. For no charge. I think what they're talking about doing is early on is doing like a per render fee. So each time you click render, that's when you pay a fee. If you just want to render the whole thing, it's $1. If you want to separate each video to then plug it in another program, then you would pay the number of people that you're separating out. So $20. But seriously, it took me all of 30 minutes because I wanted to sync things up and all. So I share that with you to say there's hope on the horizon real soon, and you can be early adopters and test this out and help me take this to market faster. I'm not profiting for it. They haven't offered me any piece of the pie. So, but I'm happy just to be the one to introduce the good news that it's there. And April, I see your hand there. What I was going to say is that I showed you two extremes. I really like the first one. I really get excited about having people sing at the same time in Zoom and to be able to say, we created this in real time. That makes my heart like sing, literally. That makes me happy. And yes, it's a little more work on my end, but the most important thing is that we experience that together and we felt that together, and then we can hear the product of that. From a practical standpoint, something like the song along is really going to be beneficial to my ministry this year, because now I can actually do a little more than I thought I was going to do, because we can have the worship team use this. Instrumentalists can use this. it's a way that we can really get more voices and more faces into our services very quickly, very easily, without doing all the stuff that I spent all summer learning how to do with these virtual choir things. April, your question.
So my question, I've done a lot of putting together virtual choir things, and I always use Adobe Premiere Pro.
Mm-hmm.
With your sing along, are you able to balance the voices how you want them?
Yep. So
Okay.
you can still add, so with sing along, it spits it out like that. So what you get is what you get there if you want to use the grid. But when you download separately, then you can, just like you do in Adobe, you can separate the audio files from the video files and equalize and all that stuff. And someone had said to me, I don't know how to do all of that. And it's true. It takes a learning curve. The group Core Amor, and I'm going to put this in here in the chat, and if you've been at some of our gatherings, you heard from Troy Robertson. There are so many videos that they've been making all summer with folks who are like instructional videos, like an hour at a time, just on mixing audio files. So they walk you through step by step how to take the file, how to separate the file, what to think about when you're mixing a file, what does it mean to mix, how to balance. Same thing with video editing. So if you want to get fancy, there's what I call YouTube University, you know, and it's all through Core Amor, where you could spend about 30, 40 hours of watching YouTube videos, and they would all be different videos. You could watch them on repeat and learn those skills. That's one step. Or two, you could use something like Song Along, let's say, get the files, and then contract with someone out there who puts together a project for you. Maybe it's your technical person in your church. And frankly, I bet there's someone in every one of your churches who has the ability to do this for you and that would be really excited about doing this. And so a friend of mine said to me, Philip, why are you spending all the time doing that when you have other things to do? You should use your resources. And I was like, you're right, I should, but I just want to know how to do it so that I can say I can. But I think in the future, you know, as we get deeper into this, I will start having other people, inviting them into the process of making some of the final products. So, you know, that could be the thing, is that you secure everything and find you a team of 3 or 4 people. Maybe they were on your technical team. Maybe they're in your congregation that could help you to do that if you want to. Heather.
I just want to confirm what I think I heard you say, is that in Song Along, you can do the recording, which is what we heard, but if you want to edit it in any way, it has to be exported to a different program.
Right. Currently, that grid that you just saw there, when it spits that out, that's what you get. And they're balanced, but it's not the most pleasing sound. Yeah, but they're balanced and all there. But you would have to export it and then do something else. Bye, Steph. Thanks. Karen?
I will just say, as someone who tried Song Along as a singer, I mean, obviously I had glitches and there were issues with my recording, but one upside to it, even if you're having to download the individual videos, is that there's Philip up here conducting and singing the lead thing. And then what wasn't working for me, but did for everybody else, is that there's a track with just the piano and the soprano line, like you would have a choir listen to while they were making their individual recording, and then the music's over here, so it's all on one screen, as opposed to, okay, open up your computer, or like, here's your music that you're holding, and then here's the track you're singing with, and make sure you're listening to that, and then record on your phone. Like, it just puts it all on one screen. So even if you had to do that extra step of downloading, at least from the singer's standpoint, once they get the glitches worked out, it's much more straightforward. So there's less hurdles to get over for your adults who are maybe not, you know, who are scared or not as versed in all of these virtual choir steps.
Thank you for that, Karen. You're right. I skipped that step. There's even a place for your section leaders. So if you have section leaders, they could be the ones to make those part files recordings. And so they hear voices they're familiar with. I do want to pause for a second to say, I still think now we're at a place where if you have singers who would commit to return to small group in person with the mask and the distancing, I would use that as the bulk of your work for Sunday mornings. So can you re-envision your choir ministry into smaller ensembles of duets and trios and have them come in person and record. And so then you have that going. And then this online platform, you keep that up and running. And maybe every 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, you're spitting out, stuff that's this way. Like I can do it every week because I've gotten real quick at it and I'm excited about it. But for those, and I'm watching some of your faces who are like, still like, that might take me a lot of time and I don't know, just put it on a grid or a recurring pattern where, once a month, I'm going to have something virtual in service. And the rest of the time, I'm going to find a way to engage either individuals at home, sending me recordings. This is the other thing that I've done. It's very basic. This is low tech. I'm about to send out an email to the whole Westwood congregation saying, if you play an instrument or you sing and you like to share something that can be used in worship or on social media, please upload it to this link. When I did that at Good Sam, I had like 40 recordings. And that was what we used for most of COVID. I had people playing their instruments outside in the park with ducks in the background. I had little kids playing their recital pieces, and I would montage them together to be like a prelude. And the congregation just loves seeing lots of faces. So the word excellence and quality, I think we can qualify that now in different ways during this time. To me, excellence and quality are we doing an excellent job of making the opportunity available for people to participate? And the quality is, are we doing a quality job of engage or implementing a number of different voices in the services singing? Okay, if they don't want to sing, can they read the creeds? What would happen if you recorded your choir doing the Lord's Prayer in Zoom? And you all know if you record Zoom, it downloads to your computer. You could take that video, send it to your video editor. There's your Lord's Prayer. It has the choir's faces or whatever other creeds you're doing in the service. So that's what I mean in myself about how can you get the choir involved in other ways in the service. I think there's lots of things that you can do while meeting weekly and still connecting to people. I've talked for a long time. I hope I covered most of the things that were on our list there. I mean, has this been meaningful? You all just let me go.
It's been very meaningful. Philip, I have one more quick question.
Yeah.
When does Westwood record their service and how do they record?
Yeah.
Is there a live recording on Sunday or is it put together during the week?
So right now we are completely put together. It's the most siloed process ever, but it works.
Okay.
Like usually you don't like silos, but
Yeah.
literally everybody records individually, except for in the last 6 weeks. And Karen, you can speak to this if you like it. When I arrived, everybody was recording in their home. And when I arrived, I was like, you know what? People miss the sanctuary. Could we put more elements in the sanctuary? And so now I do all of my music in the sanctuary. Most of the times the assisting minister does his or her liturgy in the sanctuary. Occasionally the pastor preaches from somewhere in the sanctuary, but not the traditional spot. Or outside. And so we've got this hodgepodge, but it's really nice that we see our space that we're used to there. But there's one person, Elsa, who's our contemporary worship director. She's in charge of putting the video together. And then I'm in charge of kind of the content and the layout and just like the proofing of it. And so everyone uploads their piece to a shared folder on SharePoint.
Okay.
And so there's all kinds of ways you could do that, but everyone just submits. So we have kids reading the gospel storytelling, and the children's director puts that together in a video. She uploads that. The preacher uploads that. And then Elsa takes all of those little movies and combines it together. So it works well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions there? Did we cover most everything? I hope so.
Philip, are you doing a similar covenant to the Vocal Essence one with your church choir?
I think so, except so right now I'm in the midst of, we have a team of folks doing our reopening, our preparedness plan. And so I'm trying to figure out how we're going to call it. I don't think it's going to be a covenant so much to sign as much as like for the, St. Thomas calls it the common good, and I do remind you, go to St. Thomas and visit their page. They have their for the common good plan. I think I'm going to frame it like that for church. And the question as to whether or not we have them sign it or not is going to have to be one from a larger body. I'm going to take that to the team to see if they think I should have them sign it. I am going to have them see it though and agree to abide by it. Yeah. Hmm. David?
Again, you had that, I was looking on Facebook trying to find that thing about the singer's mask or the aerosol
Thank
thing.
you.
I didn't find that yet.
Thank you for the reminder. I'll open up my Facebook right now while I'm finishing up here,
Okay.
and I'll see if I can throw that in the chat real fast. Yeah. Any other things popping up on your minds, everybody? Oh, wait, I can find it faster here if I go to my email.
This was helpful. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to spend this time with you all, and I like I said, I hope I didn't just talk too much.
That's good.
Hoping that someone would just talk to us.
Right.
Well, as you can see, I'm very shy. Oh, if you
What's
hang,
good is the enthusiasm, and the joy of it all.
we've got to keep singing. If you that's why I started. It's the only reason I started Take 5, the morning show. Like
Yeah.
at first I was hesitant because I was like, I don't want to put all that out there. But then I realized someone's got to just keep us singing and the joy of it during this time and being willing to be vulnerable. Because if you watch Take 5, some days I'm a hot mess. I can't play the right notes, but it's just like every day I'm going to be there and we're going to sing together.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
what I'm all about. There's the link there in Facebook, everybody. If you just click that link, it'll take you to a post, Jonathan's post, and then you can read more about that and about the mask. Did you find it, David?
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, friends, thanks so much. I saw many of you were willing to be a tester, so I will reach out to you. And if you think about it later and you want to test out the song along, send me an email, and then I'll get you connected where you can set up your own login and all that stuff, and then you can just start playing around. And Anthony and Mike are the gentlemen who are running behind the scenes, so they may reach out to you after you submit a project or something and just be in touch with you to talk to you about your experience. I'll probably also reach out to and ask you to share your experiences with me. That way I can convey that information to them. Hey, well, thanks for hanging with me.
Thank you.
I have just
Thank
enough
you.
time to get to church now for my gathering.
Have fun.
Thanks. See you later, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.